Hi, I'm Glenn Hughes.
And I'm Ed Muzio.
For 3 decades, I've been working inside a publicly traded company.
And for over a decade, I've been an entrepreneur supporting companies like Glenn's from the outside.
In this series, we look at the problems and challenges of the modern workplace
and provide our ideas and advice
from the inside
and out.
One of the most common questions I get in a coaching relationship is, how do I stand out from the crowd? How do I differentiate myself? Ed?
Well, you should Google, how do I differentiate myself, and then do everything in the articles that everybody else is reading. Wait, no, that's not going to work. This question sort of drives me crazy, and because it's a question about, when it's asked that way often, how do I sort of yell louder than everybody around me so I get more love and notice from the people above me? That spread across a whole culture leads to incessant yammering and lack of clarity. What I hope people mean when they say that is, how do I get really good at something and how do I get recognized for being good at it so that I'm actually making a different contribution at a different level, and then maybe I reap some rewards from that, I get promoted or whatever else I'm after. That's a better conversation, because that has to start with things like, what are you doing? How do you know you're good at it? How would you get better at it? Do you want to do more of it? Because if you get better at it, you're going to get promoted into more of it, maybe. Where are you trying to go? I think those are better questions than simply, how do I look better than everybody else around me, which I think is the root of that question sometimes.
I'm going to take a different tack on this. If you think of people as products, and the company as the purchaser of those products, one of the most common concepts for productization is unique value proposition. And so I end up coaching people about, what is your unique value proposition? What makes it so that if I was going to only pick one member of this team, it would be you? And that's a tough question for many people. I'll ask, what makes you unique? And they'll say, I'm a project manager. And I say, okay. Here's a tennis ball. Step outside my office and throw the tennis ball test. Throw this tennis ball down the hallway. And before you throw it, I want you to tell me, how far do you think it'll travel before it hits a project manager? And if they have any clue at all, they'll look at me and say, everybody here's sort of a manager of projects. Okay, that's not a unique value. The question then becomes, what is your unique value?
Yeah, and I think that can be a harder question to answer if you're in a group of project managers, but I think we're saying the same thing, which is, what do you do well, what value do you provide, and how do you make that more noticeable? That's okay. For example, if you are producing these really good products for your organization and you're the only one doing it, but nobody knows you're doing it, there's a conversation to be had about letting people know what you're doing. That's a different conversation than the sort of executive polish, how do I make myself, have enough gravitas when I'm around people at a higher level.
Yeah.
Those are really different conversations.
Right.
Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. To make this real, what I say to people when I'm coaching them is, look, I've been a manager for decades, been around the company for a long time. I know that when we decide to lay people off in a downturn, we don't always get rid of the worst people. And when we decide to promote or hire people when business is good, they're not always the quote-unquote best people. What they often are is the person with the unique value for the situation. So when we look at the list of people to let go, there'll be a guy on the list and we look at it and go, you can't let him go. He's the only guy who can align the dual flabbergator. Right. Or he's the only guy, she's the only gal who has the relationship with customer A. And so they go from here, boom, up above the cut line. And the same thing at the time that we're ready to fill a manager role, it happens that the biggest need is someone who can manage this context, and only one person has experience in that. And they get taken over the person with more experience in other areas.
There's a kind of an uncomfortable truth here, which is the same truth when we talk about how do you write a resume, which is, don't try to be everything to everyone, be something specific. And it may be that that doesn't get you what you hope it gets you, but at least it gets you something, which is something to build on, right? If you send the resume out that says, I want to be a project manager, that's a lot worse. Everybody throws it away, then sending a resume out that's very specific that 90% throw it away, but 10% go, oh, that's what we want. You're talking about a version of that, which is be specific as to your value and maybe not try so hard to chase all the other values that might be good too.
By the way, it might not be what you want it to be.
Perception versus reality?
Well, what I'm talking about is I lived and worked in Japan for 10 years and became the de facto Asia expert in our company. When I moved back to the US and got into my new role, I turned off that Asia expert thing. I had a real job and I was managing it all day, but all day, every day, my phone would ring from people around the company saying, Glenn, I'm going to Japan, I'm going to Taiwan. Tell me how to be successful
You still have
there.
the expertise and they know it.
And I'm going, dude, I have my own job here, right? And I kept pushing these away for a while. And then I sort of had this eureka moment at one point, which is, wow, I have a very unique value I'm providing. Even though I didn't come back and want to be that, I'd be crazy not to keep doing this. It was putting me in a network with executives and key people. And so I said, hey, okay, I'll play to this role. And I started doing it. And it's what got me into my current role. Is as I gained visibility, the learning team came to me and said, hey, the company's growing, we're becoming global. We need you to look at and address our global learning program. I did, and then they hired me to manage it.
Which leads to the next thing, which leads to the next thing too, which also illustrates the point that if what you're trying to do is yammer so loud that you get picked for something, you actually can't see the road ahead usually all the way down.
No.
If instead you demonstrate specific value so that you move somewhere useful, you'll find the next step when you get there. That's probably going to work better and be less stressful than trying to map out your whole course and then yell loud enough to let someone pull you along on it.
And by the way, your differentiation has a half-life, right? I was the Asia expert for a number of years. Why? Because I lived in Asia, and at the time there were very few Asians working at headquarters. Fast forward 10 years, and our population is now 50% Asians. I'm not the Asia expert.
Nobody's knocking on your door for advice about Asia anymore.
We can ask a Japanese now.
Right.
He's right down the hall. We can ask a Korean. We can ask an Indian. And by the way, I haven't lived there for 10 years, so there was a decay on my knowledge.
Right.
One of the things you have to ask is, if this is my differentiation, am I going to maintain it? And how am I going to maintain it? How am I going to build and stay ahead of the pack in this? Or do I let it decay, and do I turn left at Albuquerque and pick a new differentiation? And this is a question that I think about seriously in my development planning every year is, where's my differentiation, what's it going to be, and how am I managing it going forward?
And I think that, from my perspective, is the key to, again, iteration. Every year I look at it again, every year I look at it again. It's not reasonable to map 20 years of your career. It's not bad to think about what you'd like it to look like, but your real value is now and in the next 6 months, the next year. Maximize that. That'll differentiate you a lot more, I think.
Yep.
So maybe the question back to the audience, are you differentiating yourself intentionally? If so, how? If not, how might you do a better job?